Hi, and welcome to Filmmakers Compass Podcast, a show where we talk about movies and, well, more movies. I'm D-Man, joined by CP, and if you can't see us right now and you're just listening, CP is rocking a Santa hat and a red flannel shirt, and I am rocking a green Christmas movie character shirt themed to the Friends font.
Yep.
So, which is pretty great because this week, CP, we are going to be talking Christmas movies.
And only Christmas movies.
Yeah, we're not going too specific here. We have a lot of different content for a lot of the different movies, and we may dive in deeper on a future episode. But this week, we're just going to enjoy the holiday spirit and, dive into those Christmas films. So before we do that, though, how are you doing?
Dude,
you pumped?
I'm very pumped. You know how much I love Christmas. In fact, I know you know that because you love Christmas even more than I do.
I don't want to quantify it. I think we both carry the Christmas spirits in our hearts. But CP, I got to ask you, have you been watching any Christmas movies this holiday season?
I'm kind of slacking. Now, I went and saw a couple in the theaters. As our viewers know, I went and saw Best Christmas Pageant Ever. I went and saw Red One. But I've only seen 2.5 movies outside of that. And that's pretty underwhelming.
Okay. That is a little underwhelming. It's a little strange, given the fact that normally I think you try to watch one almost every single night.
I know, dude. I know.
I do want to say, if you haven't seen it already, I do recommend James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special.
That's not a Christmas movie.
It is totally a Christmas special movie, and it's on Disney Plus right now. You should get over there and watch it.
I don't think anybody should watch that. I think you guys should actually watch a good Christmas movie.
I think
not a crappy one.
Yeah, you're gonna have to wing it and try to get it in there.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Come on.
Let me put it this way. I actually
you love James Gunn.
Christmas.
You love James Gunn.
No. Oh my gosh. What is it? Is it just like a bunch of poop jokes and Christmas
There's probably
lights?
a couple. Yeah, there's a couple. There's definitely.
Yeah, of course, because it's James Gunn.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. You watch it and then give us your honest opinion.
All right. I'll record that right now.
All right. Well, of course.
Hey, everyone, this is CP. I just watched the James Gunn Christmas special, and it's crap. Don't watch it. All right. Okay, we're good. All right, let's get back to the episode.
If that really shows up on our socials, that would be amazing. All right. Well, before we dive into our conversation about Christmas movies this week, we do want to get to our shout outs at the top of the episode. So first up, CP, we got to give a big thanks to Brian Wallace for coming on the show to discuss World Twisteries and how to develop the pilot for a new show. I love the discussion. I thought it was great. And I hope all of our listeners, you guys enjoyed it well. I've been releasing clips from that episode in addition to the whole thing. And the response has been pretty good so far. Lots of views.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. He was an awesome guest. So we'll definitely have to have him back on the show.
Yeah, and then, I mean, we can always bring him on, too, to talk about some specific films or anything that's really... I feel like there's going to be a few bones to pick. Like, I feel like he might have, like, a couple things that he's like, oh, I got to talk about this. And Brian, if you're listening right now and you know what those things are, let us know and we'll get you back on because that would be a lot of fun. So next up, I got to give a shout out to D. Kirschnex, who gave us a share and a shout out saying, you like movies? Listen to this podcast. It's my buddies. Like, support, and share. So thank you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it, Bam.
Love it when we get actual shares. That's pretty cool. Because we get a lot of engagement, CP, a lot of likes, a lot of comments, but not as many shares, I think, as I would personally like.
I think most people don't really think this is a great podcast. They aren't game to promote it. So thank you, man.
I do have to give a shout out to my cousin-in-law, Jeanette, who said that she came across me in her Instagram feed and she was like, oh my God, I know him. He's a celebrity. So
I mean, you are a celebrity, D-man.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Between and then I got FCP and IBC, you have a major internet following.
Yes, and then I got to give a big shout out to my coworker Will, who I went to my Christmas party at my office up in Lancaster last week, and he let me know that same thing. I showed up in his feed, and he's like, "Oh my God, I know that guy." So the algorithms are working, CP, I guess. But Will, Jeanette, thank you so much for checking out, I guess, some of the content. I don't know if you've listened to a whole podcast, but I'm glad you guys discovered the show and hopefully are enjoying what you're finding so far. So thank you so much. Of course, we got a shout out for Ivor, who, when promoting the new episode with Brian, he chimed in the comments and said, "Can't wait!" ! So Ivor, I hope you really enjoyed that episode. and I hope you're ready for the discussion today because I am.
Yes.
Next up, CP, my wife Steph gave us a high five emoji in the comments on some of our content. So I want to say thanks to my wife.
Thanks, Steph. I feel like that might have been like pity engagement.
It may be.
She's like, all right, I'm gonna have to give them something. They're trying
No,
hard.
I think it was very the high five emoji had a lot of energy, so I felt it. So
Okay. All right. Good job. Well, thank you, Steph.
yeah, thanks, babe. Lead Bones on YouTube said of Brian's discussion on new tech, he said, I'm a post techie entering my Luddite phase, which actually sounds a lot like Brian, I think.
Dude, how awesome was it actually having someone else on this podcast who's a Luddite other than just me?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting because I
I was
feel like
so
you and I
psyched.
we differ there. I feel like I'm always very optimistic when it comes to new tech and trying new things and you're sort of like the old ways are the best and don't
Look,
mess with a
look,
winning formula.
we've all seen Terminator 2. The old ways are the best. We know what's coming.
I feel like you using Terminator 2 as they push the boundaries of special effects is not necessarily the best example of the old ways of doing things. It's like that in Jurassic Park were literally the shining examples of like, wow, look what you could do.
Okay, I'm not using it as an example of filmmaking. I'm using it as an example of what is to come when we are all sent to robot death camps.
I know. OpenAI equals Skynet. Could be. I don't know. And then finally, last shout out goes to Drucker, who, when prompted that if he were to get $100,000 for a small indie movie, he said, probably make a horror movie. Good ones can be done reasonably cheap. Then I get to pocket whatever is left.
Yeah, Drucker and I are actually we're making a horror movie together, D man.
I mean, that's pretty cool. I don't know. I didn't see that original post. I just caught his comment and I thought that was pretty interesting because, yeah, you think $100,000 on an indie film. It was described as an indie film, so not a actual like theatrical release. I was like, I mean, that would go a long way, especially for a slasher or a horror film.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty interesting.
Pretty
But especially,
interesting.
you think about Brian describing the money and budget and everything behind getting a TV pilot made, and you're like, $100,000.
Yeah,
Bring it, bring it
he
on.
probably could have made like 5 seasons of that show.
I know. I'm saying, like, bring it. That would be awesome. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, thank you, Drucker. Always appreciate the comments. And CP, that does it for shout outs this week. So, I am going to throw it over to you now for our box office breakdown.
All right, everyone, let's get into our box office breakdown. So, Red One is actually number 5 of the Christmas movies.
Is it making money now? Is it doing okay now that the holiday season's in full gear?
Let's check it out. The total gross for Red One is 165 million
It's all right.
domestic and worldwide. So good, not great.
It sounds
Consider
like Red 1 is going to be in the red. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's going to make that back. But
Um,
the holiday theatrical releases do have legs. There's an opportunity there for movies to, stick around longer than I think they do during the summer season, where it's like you got 2 or 3 weeks to make your money.
yeah. Yeah. So there were a lot of movies that opened this past weekend. Very few of them cracked the top 5. There was Werewolves, there's Y2K, so a bunch of horror films.
What was
And
Y2K? I saw a trailer for it, but I didn't really get the gist of what it was. It seemed like it was like an early 2000s or late 90s like horror film.
it's set up like a teen coming of age movie during the Y2K bug when technology comes to life and kills everyone. I'm actually going to see it later this week because I'm very excited about it. But it doesn't look like it did that well.
I
And
mean, I
it is
bet
an
its budget's
A24
pretty
film.
low. Yeah, I
But
bet
I
it's not
just love the 90s, so I'll check it out.
probably hanging out at a Blockbuster.
Yeah, it made about $2 million opening weekend. So not incredible, but I'm guessing there was also a very limited release.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll have to dig into that a little bit further. So also this past weekend, Interstellar was re-released in theaters, which I did
Amazing.
not go see, but I should have.
I know. I heard it actually did really well,
Um,
and it makes sense because that movie's awesome.
it made $16 million for a movie that had already been re-released.
Like what,
Well,
10
it's
years
made
ago?
$16 million total with the re-release, but yeah, it made about almost 5 million this past weekend. So not terrible.
Quite
Okay,
impressive, yeah.
so number four, opening this weekend is Push Pal: The Rule Part Two, which I do not know what that
No,
is in any way.
I don't know what it is either, but tip of the cap for making the top five.
Yeah, it made $11 million worldwide, just over nine domestically. So awesome job. Don't really know anything about the film now. That's
Yep.
just number three, Gladiator 2. This is still expected. It is made upwards of almost $400 million worldwide. So everyone's getting paid off of that. It's
Can
the
I
same
can I
spot
guess
that
the
it was
top two?
before. Why don't you go for it?
I'm gonna guess two is Wicked and one is Moana 2.
You are absolutely correct. That is number two and number one. Now, again, we need to check in with Moana 2, which has made over $600 million
Wow.
total. So Disney, great payday.
Yeah, that's one. I mean, easily could have predicted that, a family themed movie during the holiday season, especially Thanksgiving weekend when families want to go do something, you're like, man, that's gonna make money.
Well, and I'm getting the impression that's exactly what Paramount is thinking and why they are going to be releasing Sonic next weekend. Just
Probably
in time
right.
for Christmas. Good family movie.
Get people out to the theaters when they have some time off and the kids are
Yep.
off, and it's like, let's go see Sonic. You're like, exactly.
Yep.
So, and then in a weird way, it's also differentiating yourself as a, sort of big budget video game blockbuster from having to compete with like the other summer season movies.
Mm-hmm.
You're not having to go up against Deadpool and Wolverine
Yeah.
here,
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's nice.
So that's the box office this weekend.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, CP. Well, first up, the topic that I wanted to address, which you kind of addressed in the box office breakdown, is why haven't we gotten any recent Christmas movie classics? There's so many dating back to like the old era of Hollywood. You have like Miracle on 34th Street and White Christmas and even the animated, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And then you have like the sort of late 80s, early 90s, like new era of Christmas classics, which is like, Christmas Vacation, Home Alone, Santa Claus, and even to a certain extent, you go forward to the early 2000s, you have Elf, Bad Santa, like Four Christmases. I don't know. There's, a whole bunch.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they come in sort of these waves where it's like we get a whole bunch of them, but I don't feel like we've really had a ton of new Christmas classics being added to the catalog recently. And I was curious if you had an opinion as to why you think that is. Or even for that matter, like if you were to identify, like I think one movie that stands out that was pretty cool and I think would be added is maybe The Holdovers and
Mm-hmm.
maybe Klaus
Mm-hmm.
as a staple of the holiday season, the rotation. But otherwise, I can't think of anything, and I did a little bit of research. There wasn't much that I was super excited about that's really within maybe the last 10 years.
Well, considering that it seems like every year there is a Christmas movie that comes out.
Yeah, we got Red One, but I don't think that's gonna make my rotation.
No. And it's tough to say. So a Christmas movie comes out every year, but what sets some of them apart? Well, for one, I think it's rewatchability. You know,
True.
there's a lot of Christmas movies, like Fred Claus that comes out, and you're like, meh, eh,
It was good. I
not
enjoyed it.
not necessarily great. And I think the other thing is a true Christmas classic needs to feel timeless, right? We've
Mm.
talked about this time and time again. Part of the reason why Home Alone hit so well, part of the reason why Christmas Vacation was so popular is there's very timeless elements to it in terms of not
Like
just the story that's
dating
being
it.
told, but yeah, it doesn't feel, it feels like it could have been around forever, and it makes it easy to rewatch.
Yeah, and sometimes even setting like a Christmas story, setting the story back in time, just already allows the audience to accept that this movie is nostalgic for an older time.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that way, it often feels a little timeless because it's not, of its time. It's not an
Mm-hmm.
80s movie. Even though I think Christmas Story was released in what, 83, 84, something like that.
Yep.
So yeah, that's interesting. And I don't know, I think giving it thought, I thought another issue too was streaming and just the oversaturation of access to the current Christmas catalog that we already have. So I think if you go backwards, and you think about us growing up in, I guess late 80s, 90s, you had to have these movies on VHS or watch them on TV on the night that it was on. Part of the competition for our attention at that time was you can also go to the theater and catch the holiday movie whenever you want. I think now because we have access to, I mean, I could, you can look at my shirt right here, but if I went through all of them, I bet I could find them on streaming. And it's like I have all the holiday movies I need. I mean, I can't imagine anybody's watching more than 25.
I think that's a really good point. I didn't think about it. So I'm changing my answer. I'm changing my answer. That's it. Because of streaming, when we were younger, you're like, hey, this Christmas movie is worthy of buying it on DVD so we can make sure we watch A Christmas Story every year.
Yeah.
And now there's so many that come out. I mean, how many new Christmas movies does Netflix drop in a season? A
Well, and
ton.
that's even an extension to the oversaturation that streaming brings us, which is also then, like you just said, there's additional offerings that only come through streaming. The Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special. You think of the Christmas Chronicles,
Mhm.
Spirited. Like if you start going through these and you're like, wow, there there are a lot that I can stream right from home, and maybe that sort of limits what gets a theatrical run.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
But I would argue to counter that, though, that if somebody came out with an incredible Christmas movie and it hit theaters, I think it would be a smashing success. So I think people are definitely hungry for a new holiday classic, but I don't know if the studios are, willing to put a ton of money behind it when there's just so many offerings and competition from streaming.
I think that's a good point. I mean, the other thing too is like you look at something like Red One, that's a good example, right? Obviously, you have an, you know, elite cast, some of the biggest actors in Hollywood, but what was the budget to make that movie?
It's probably
And is
pretty
it
high.
really truly going to be the success that if you made a $20 million Christmas movie that had a lot of heart and sentiment and tapped into that old timey Christmas feeling that people like? I mean, would that have made more? I think probably.
Yeah, because I mean, another reason, so, moving beyond sort of the oversaturation and streaming element, but I do think too that the older Christmas movies or the classics that we refer to also sort of have the right mix between like heartwarming, comedy. And I feel like sometimes now they're either maybe a little too formulaic, like following sort of rom-com tropes, or even, I don't know, like sort of parodying holiday stuff. And I don't know if people are really into that element, if that makes sense. Like when you're going to see a Christmas movie, you kind of want certain Christmas elements to be a part of it. I mean, it can't be formulaic, but at the same time, like you still want to feel that Christmas feeling.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. We've also seen a resurgent where there's a lot of what I would consider like alternative Christmas. And I
Yeah.
think you're right. You might see it because it's funny. And I think maybe something like Bad Santa kind of kicked this off, right? Where there's these either very raunchy Christmas comedies or horror slash action Christmas movies, which people might enjoy it, but I don't think they're compelled to rewatch it every year, like the movies
Yeah.
that
And
we
like when you're
watched
talking about
when we
like,
were kids.
sort of modern day like raunchy Christmas stories, there's like Office Christmas Party or even The Night Before, where it's like, a group of guys go out drinking in New York City to celebrate Christmas.
Hmm.
And I like I personally love that movie. That movie speaks to me. Seth Rogen,
Mm,
JGL,
surprising.
the Falcon. I love it. I'm like, that movie's tight, and it's on my list to watch every year. But at the same time, I could see where that doesn't have the mass appeal that maybe Home Alone does, or Christmas Vacation.
Yeah.
So, and there are some of those like raunchy Christmas movies. So I don't know. That's interesting as well. And then the other thing too is like the level of nostalgia. It's hard to compete with the older Christmas classics because everybody's excited to watch them again after, basically not having seen them for 11 months. And you do have to compete with like, just our nostalgia for that older time, you know.
Well, I think that's a big part of it, right? Because especially as we get older, right, we want to keep watching, we want to keep the traditional alive and keep watching the same movies, and then we want to be able to share it with our kids and things like that.
Yep.
And eventually there's only so many movies you can watch. As you said, you only have, 25, 26,
That's if you watch one every day of the 25 days of Christmas. You
and
know,
only people like us do that. So
exactly. So anyway, I don't know. I was just curious what your take was because I do feel like it is a little weird that we don't necessarily get a ton of them anymore, but I do also feel like they come in waves. I feel like, right, it was like uh 60s, 70s, late 80s, early 90s, like early 2000s, and then there's just been a sort of moderate mix of maybe a couple in there throughout the net last like 15 years that
Mhm.
maybe make people's lists. And then also, I was going to ask you, how do you feel about like Lifetime
Or Hallmark.
or Hallmark? Yeah, like Lifetime, Hallmark, they do their Christmas movies. Obviously they're made for TV or even streaming if you have their streaming platforms. But like, I mean, they also pump out a crap load of these movies.
I know, dude. And the crazy thing is, there's like four plots they use for every single movie.
I know they're fairly formulaic, and not only that, but also I one of the things that's interesting about those two to me is that they they don't make like classics. I feel like everybody's just excited for the new movies that are coming out this year,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
No, for sure.
Versus like going back into their old catalog and being like, "Oh my God, we have, 50 Christmas movies we could watch."
Yeah.
You're kind of like, "No, I'm excited for the new ones."
Yeah, that is sort of an interesting thing.
So, but I mean, I'm not necessarily their target audience, so maybe other people have different viewing behavior than I would. But I'm not the huge, Hallmark Christmas movie. Because it's interesting. I do think I actually this season I know I asked you what movies you've watched. I've watched like Elf, Christmas Vacation, A Christmas Story, and then I also watched The Holiday. And so while we're on the topic of like Hallmark and Lifetime, it's interesting to me that I feel like The Holiday really fit into that Christmas kind of classic lineup versus ending up like a Hallmark movie. And that is interesting. Like I've always spoke to the idea that like Home Alone, if you just take that premise, could have easily been a Disney Channel original movie.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Easily. Like that. And yet here it is with this epic cinematic quality. It feels, larger than life and it's like a great film. And then you look at something like The Holiday and you're like, here they're doing like rom-com, like Christmas love stories. And yet for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just the director or the writer or what, maybe a combination of all that, those ingredients, somehow they sort of elevated above that just formulaic made
What
for
could have
TV
been
film.
a made for TV Hallmark movie.
Exactly. That's so
That's
interesting to
interesting.
me.
That is a good point.
And I swear to you, like Disney Channel, when we were in the early 2000s, I mean, they were pumping out Disney Channel original movies like one every month or something, or like two every
Hmm.
month. It's
Hmm.
pretty wild. And I totally could see the premise of Home Alone ending up as one of those movies.
No, I
And it would
agree.
just be made on a cheap budget, look like it was made on a set. And
Yeah.
that's that. No classic.
We wouldn't be
So
watching it today. That's for sure.
yeah, that is interesting. Well, one of the things actually, CP, I want to change gears here and talk about something a little bit different. But I wanted
Okay.
to ask you, what are some like Hanukkah or Kwanzaa movies that you enjoy? Because I know we're always so focused on like Christmas and sort of the whole like Christian element of the holiday, but I know there's also, quite a good list of like Hanukkah movies. So I don't know if you just want me to like read off a list because I could.
Go off the list. Let's start there.
All right. So Hanukkah movies. We're looking at Eight Crazy Nights. That's the animated musical comedy by Adam Sandler.
Hmm.
There's a movie called Full Court Miracle, which is a Disney Channel original movie. Speaking of Disney Channel original movies, there you get one. Uh, which actually is a basketball team inspired by a Hanukkah miracle. I haven't seen it, so
I don't
uh,
think I've seen it either.
here's the movie that I want to see more than anything. And this might even be Drucker's nickname, but there's a movie called The Hebrew Hammer. And it's a Jewish superhero parody film about saving Hanukkah from an evil Santa Claus.
That sounds awesome.
That sounds
Drucker,
amazing.
have you seen this and where can I watch it?
I don't know, that to me is like quite a premise. So a movie that also gets mentioned here is An American Tale, which is
Not really a Hanukkah movie per se, but
right.
they're
I was gonna say there's a caveat that it's not actually a Hanukkah movie, but it does have a memorable Hanukkah scene where Fievel's family celebrates and they give him the hat.
Mhm.
So just I think if people literally chime in and they're like, "Oh, every Christmas I watch Harry Potter," you're like, we can mention an American
Yeah,
Tail.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then there's of course some Lifetime movies as well.
Yep.
So Mistletoe and Menorah is a Lifetime movie where a woman learns about Hanukkah traditions to impress her business partner. But
I've actually seen it.
okay, so CP, here's some stuff that I actually did want to explore a little bit, and this is jumping
Okay.
over to the medium of television. So I don't know if you ever saw this as a kid, but I actually remember watching it and really loved the episode. But that's Rugrats of Rugrats Chanukah.
I
Now,
do not remember that.
it is so good. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend you actually go see if you can get it on Paramount Plus or whatever and go stream it. It's actually a TV special, so it was not a regular episode of Rugrats, where the babies imagine the Hanukkah story in their usual they like sort of the make believe Rugrats style.
Mhm.
Incredible telling.
Huh.
I mean, it
I'll check
sounds
it out.
stupid because it's like a Nicktoon, but I actually remember it, which
Okay. Okay.
is quite incredible. And then hey. So there's Arthur's Perfect Christmas, which is a holiday special, which includes Francine celebrating Hanukkah along the other traditions. So it's not again Hanukkah specific, but it is a focal point of the show.
Mhm.
And then CP, you're gonna know this one, Friends, the one with the holiday armadillo. So I'm assuming you watch this one with friends every year.
One of my very favorite episodes. Oh, brilliant writing, hilarious. And not only that, but Superman and Santa Claus also show up.
Ross is Jewish and he wants to celebrate Hanukkah with his son Ben, who, because of his mom's, usually just celebrates Christmas. And so he doesn't know much about Hanukkah. But when he goes to rent a costume, Ross ends up only being able to find an armadillo costume. And he ends up becoming the holiday armadillo and, your Jewish friend. And it's just such a classic episode. And I think that was really fun and, cool to explore on Friends. Two other ones that I wanted to acknowledge was the OC. I don't know if you ever saw the best Christmaka ever. That actually became a
Ooh,
traditional
yes.
episode out of kind of like a Galentine's Day from Parks and Recreation, where they celebrate single ladies on Valentine's Day. Christmaka became sort of like a tradition out of that show, and a lot of
Yeah.
people did that,
Yeah.
which was pretty cool. And then two other shows is just Even Stevens, Heck of a Hanukkah, and The Simpsons, The Grift of the Magi. So
I definitely remember the Even Stevens episode for sure.
yeah, there's quite a good amount, really. There wasn't a ton that I was able to find for Kwanzaa, and especially a ton that I had seen. I
The only
felt like,
Kwanzaa one I remember was an episode of The Proud Family when we were kids.
yeah, that was listed. There's a 2008 film called The Black Candle, A Kwanzaa Celebration, which is a documentary narrated by Maya Angelou that explores the history, cultural significance, and modern day celebration of Kwanzaa. Which that sounds interesting if you're unfamiliar with the traditions and
Hmm.
some of the stuff related to the holiday. And then, ironically, there's also a Rugrats Kwanzaa special, which again is another holiday special where Susie and her family celebrate Kwanzaa and learn about the holiday's values.
Wow.
So Rugrats
Rugrats
coming
was
in,
teaching us so much stuff.
yeah, Rugrats is just coming in hot. I remember, dude, they had a Mother's Day special where Chucky lost his mom and like breaks your heart. That show was amazing. Rugrats, just incredible.
Oh, haven't seen that in a long time, D man.
Well, speaking of Rugrats, and how their holiday specials were separate from their regular episodes, I did want to ask you too. Do you miss like the Christmas TV special? Like, was there a certain magic to everyone gathering to watch a movie? Because I think now with like streaming and accessibility, it feels like yes, I can watch what I want on demand, but don't you kind of miss like knowing everybody else is watching it too?
Oh, totally.
Like the ones that really stand out to me were I always watched whenever Home Alone was on. Disney Channel had the Santa Claus. I always watched How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the cartoon.
Hmm.
Charlie Brown Christmas, because they
Hmm.
aired them, right?
Yeah.
That's the only way you could watch them. They
Yeah.
didn't sell them.
Yeah.
And then, well, that was it. I think those were the ones that I always watched. And then I watched the Rockefeller Center like tree lighting, which you can still do, but most people just catch it on social media now. But it's like, I don't know, we've talked many times on this podcast about the concept of maybe like a streamer like Disney Plus adding maybe like a live tile. You know how they have like their Disney animation tile, Marvel, Star Wars, Discovery, or whatever it is, and then ESPN. What if they had like a live tile where it was like you could click on that and they're airing Home Alone. You could watch it
Hmm.
anytime you want. And yet there's
Hmm.
sort of this shared experience that people get because streaming doesn't really offer that anywhere. You'd have to
No,
have cable.
I agree. And I think that that would be so smart to just get that community aspect of like, hey, this is what everybody's watching.
Because I like that. There's something to that that just makes it feel a little bit more like special, like shared. Because I'm like, yeah, of course, I can watch whatever I want when I want. But like, what about water cooler moments? What about like when you go to the office the
Yep.
next day and you're like, or even if you're remote and you're in your Teams meeting and your Zoom meeting and you're like, hey, who watched Charlie Brown last night? It was on NBC or whatever.
Yep. No, you're right. And it's something we just don't get anymore, which is a bummer.
It really is. There's just, I don't know, I miss that element of like, I feel like people do that with episode drops, if that makes sense. Like, you know, uh, Star Wars has The Mandalorian and like it drops on, 6 p.m. on Tuesdays. And sort of for that night, everybody online is kind of talking about this new episode of the show. And I miss that element with like Christmas movies.
Remember how like ABC Family used to do like 25 Days of Christmas, right? And they
Yeah.
would show like a
I think
different
they still
Christmas
do,
movie
although it's
every
not
day,
ABC. It's like Freebie now.
freeform now or
Yeah,
something.
Freeform or something.
But what if Disney Plus did that where they're like, hey, there's going to be 25 days of Christmas. We're going to watch one Christmas movie every night, but you're not going to know what we're premiering until 7 p.m. Eastern time when it goes live.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool. And like I would tune in. I mean, I wouldn't tune in every night, but I would definitely tune in.
If you're not doing anything, yeah, what would be cool? And again, what a way to get old content back in the conversation.
Yeah, because even I mean, I know you and I have talked about sort of the concept of even for this podcast, like how cool it would be if like you and I were to, schedule a time where we live stream ourselves watching maybe like Home Alone. Now, obviously we can't live stream the movie Home Alone, but we could for, a gathering moment, get us together watching it, maybe live tweeting or, recording some of our reactions and interacting with the other people who hopefully put the movie on their TV and hit play and are interacting with us as we watch a movie. Like that seems cool to me.
No, I agree. Or even a few years ago, I don't know if you remember this, back when Max was HBO Max,
Yeah.
they had during October in preparation for Halloween, they had three options and you didn't know what they were until you clicked on them, and it was a tribute to it, and it said not scary, scary, or very scary. And if you picked on not scary, it was something like Hocus Pocus, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And then it was a scary movie and a really scary movie, but every day they swapped it out. So every day there was a little bit of an element of I'm like, well, I should see what the new movies are just to see what's worth watching.
I agree. I think they could do something a little bit more fun with streaming because if we go back to our previous topic and we're sort of looking at like, why we're not getting Christmas classics, uh, then it would be cool if the streamers, right? And part of that reason is oversaturation in streaming. It would be cool if the streamers sort of embraced their role that they play and made it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because they are the
Because
content moderators, so put it out there.
yeah, do something like I know they have like if you go on Max right now or even Disney, like they have like, Disney, you like swipe through the banner thing at the top and they're like, oh, here's all of our Christmas movies that we have on our streamer. But I'm like, that's not enough. Do more. Make it more
Hmm.
fun.
No, I agree.
But CP, before we move on, because we're gonna get into some overrated, underrated
Ooh,
of
okay.
Christmas movies
Okay, okay.
and a little bit of Christmas trivia here. I also, before we start talking about these Christmas movies, I wanted to ask you what even counts as a Christmas movie? What's your criteria?
Oh boy, D man, this is a tough conversation. Okay, so Christmas movie. It has to take place during the Christmas season.
Okay.
It
One.
has to include elements of Christmas culture,
Okay.
meaning people need to be buying a tree, going to a Christmas party. They need to do something Christmas related.
Okay.
And it needs to include Christmas music. That's the three things that I look for. And then, I mean, if we're going to go with a fourth, I'm going to say there needs to be an element thematically that ties into the spirit of the holidays, family,
Okay.
giving, things like that. Those are the four pieces of criteria that I'm going to give. And if you disagree with me, well, you're wrong because that's what
Because
it is.
what I want to ask you then is why do you think Die Hard is often always considered a Christmas movie, even though people argue this every year, and Lethal Weapon isn't?
Dude, oh my gosh. Dude, I wonder this all the time. They both came out about the same time. Both of them, at the time they were released, were kind of the pinnacle of the action movie genre. And both of them take place around Christmas. The the only thing I can point to is the fact that, and I mean, again, when we break it down, both of them both of them play Christmas music in it. If you
Mm-hmm.
remember, Lethal
Yeah.
Weapon starts playing Jingle Bell Rock as the credits are rolling. Both of them take place in Los Angeles, so it's not like one of them is set against a backdrop of like some small, snowy town in Maine and the other one's in Los Angeles. Like, so it's not a setting issue. Both of them are set against the holiday season, while Die Hard is on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Like, that's the major difference there. And both of them involve elements of Christmas, right?
And yet
Remember,
one's
very,
almost never on the classics list.
and I don't
So weird.
understand why.
So let me ask you, Batman Returns, Christmas movie, not a Christmas movie.
Not a Christmas movie.
Ooh, okay. It's getting interesting now. I mean, that
Well,
is a
because
great movie. Is it? I mean, oh, never mind. I was gonna say, where
okay,
do you put Batman Returns in your
I
Batman?
put Batman Returns as a movie taking place at Christmas time.
Okay.
Because again, when we look at the Lethal Weapon example, Lethal Weapon is about friendship. They're coming together. He gets his adopted family by going into Murdoch's family. They do stuff that pertains to Christmas, right?
Yeah,
There's a Christmas party. They go, and remember, the movie starts out when we first get introduced to Riggs. He's at a Christmas tree farm buying Christmas trees.
that's true. Yeah, I don't know.
But I
Okay.
don't get that same thing from Batman Returns. It's like set against a backdrop of the winter.
Well, they do
Not,
have, don't they have the Christmas tree lighting
yeah,
ceremony? That's
yeah.
one thing that really stood out. But I mean, other than maybe aesthetics, I don't think Christmas itself really plays a role thematically or literally plot wise in the story at all. And
No.
I don't know that even, other than Wayne Manor maybe being a little decorated for, the holiday season, Bruce Wayne even really, acknowledges Christmas anyway.
No, right?
But it does work for the Penguin and penguins and, sort of him finding his penguin family and stealing everybody's firstborn kids.
True.
No, it does not really. But this is definitely a topic. I want to throw it over to our listeners here. What is your criteria for what makes something a Christmas or even for that matter a holiday movie? Why are some considered Christmas movies and other ones aren't? Like again, I said it earlier, but like some people watch Harry Potter every Christmas, which it seems like it would line up more with like Halloween.
Not a Christmas movie.
But a lot of people watch it at Christmas. I don't know. So I don't think Harry Potter is a Christmas movie, although it has a great Christmas scene.
Well,
Love
if you're
that.
going with Christmas scenes, then that means Mean Girls also a Christmas movie because they do the the holiday pageant.
Yeah, it can't just be a scene. I mean, that's definitely, it's got, the whole movie's got to take place, or at least a majority of it. So, because I
Very
mean, like, think of the Santa Claus, like a majority of it, but like they also cover the year between two Christmases.
true. Very true.
So I don't know. Leave that one up to the listeners. You guys let us know because I'm curious. And I bet people have some very strong opinions out there. And also, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Let us
Yes.
let us know.
There's nothing to talk about. It is a Christmas movie. It makes all those four factors that I said. So you can tell us why you think I'm wrong, but you're wrong.
All right, CP. Well, now I want to do a little overrated, underrated with Christmas
Ooh.
movies.
All right, let's get into this. This is going to be fun, D man.
So, what I'm looking for from you is your opinion on how this movie is rated in its overall perception. So, not necessarily a review of the film itself, but if you think culturally we have overrated it or underrated it.
All right, let's get into this.
Okay, so first up, I'm going to go with the classic Elf.
Is there an option to rate it just
Like properly rated?
yeah,
Sure.
properly rated?
Okay, so Elf is the classic that it deserves to be, but it's not underrated.
No, it's not underrated.
Okay.
I think people recognize it for what it is. Brilliant.
All right. Now, I'm going to go with A Christmas Story Christmas.
I think that's underrated. I actually think it's better than people remember it.
Okay, that's interesting
Granted, I
because
know it's a new movie, but
I think they have a. Isn't there like a sequel that's like titled something like My Summer Adventure
My
or
Summer
something?
Story.
Yeah, My Summer Story, and then there's also like the 2000s A
Don't
Christmas
even
Story 2.
overrated. It should not
Overrated.
even exist. Should not exist.
Okay.
Disservice to humanity.
What about the Polar Express?
Overrated.
Really? You're going with the old
I'm going with the movie where Tom Hanks saves Christmas.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a little overrated. I mean, for
Uh,
one, like, look, yes, the book is popular. It's a classic, but it's also like a 5-page book. How did he get turned into like a 2-hour movie?
Okay, well on that note then, I'm going to ask you uh How the Grinch Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey, cuz it's also based on a book.
Mm.
And I thought Jim Carrey knocks it out of the park. For a lot
I
of people,
actually, I actually think it's underrated because now that there have been three, there's the original How the
the
Grinch Stole
Grinch,
Christmas.
yeah.
Then there's the Benedict Cumberbatch one, The Grinch. I think the Jim Carrey one is the most underrated of the three.
Okay, that's interesting. All right, let's do The Holdovers.
I think it's underrated.
Underrated. Oh,
It should have
okay.
won best writing last year at the Academy Awards.
I do love that movie. It's on my list to watch this year. So
Yeah,
I
mine
think
too.
I'm actually going to agree with you there. I think it's a little underrated because even though it did well at the awards season, and I think it was recognized as this sort of great movie, I don't know if it made a lot of people's Christmas lists.
No, I don't think so.
So I would say I would to all of you out there who haven't seen The Holdovers, I'd give it a shot, especially if it's probably not for your kids, but like if you're looking for, a good movie for like you and your spouse or even like your teenage kids. I thought it was
Mhm.
good.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right. Let's do Jingle All the Way. Overrated, underrated.
Oh, overrated.
All right.
Look, when I was a kid, that was one of my favorite Christmas movies, but it does not hold up. Arnold has no business being the comedy family. I mean, considering that he was the biggest star in the world at the 90s. And this is Christopher Columbus produced this movie, a man who understands Christmas. It does not land. It's totally overrated.
I actually was gonna say I think it's properly rated. I think Jingle All the Way, it really fits into that conversation about gift giving and sort of the Black Friday frenzy that used to go on around Christmas shopping.
Hmm.
The Tickle Me Elmo and the N64 and the PlayStation 5 and like sort of people going crazy over either some wild deals that some of these stores are having or literally specific items for that holiday season.
Hmm.
And I don't know, I just feel like it has its place. Like I get why A, people like it. I think it's funny, but B, I think it actually does speak to a certain element of our culture that, you know, people don't always acknowledge around the holidays.
All right. Fair enough.
Christmas Chronicles. Overrated,
Um,
underrated.
I think it's overrated. I only say that because I think at the time this was Netflix response to having a definitive Christmas movie. And it's fun and it's kind of clever, but I don't know that it's I think that in 20 years I don't know that we're going to be still watching it in the way that today we're still watching A Christmas Story or Christmas
Yeah.
Vacation or Miracle on 34th Street.
Okay, I get that. I did actually like that movie, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of maybe like the Star Wars sequel trilogy where it was like, well, at least I do, but like I feel like everybody watches Star Wars to this day. The
Hmm.
1977 Star Wars. You're like, yeah, it still gets watched all these years later. And yet you're like, will the sequel trilogy be watched 50 years from now? You're like,
It's like, probably not.
I mean, maybe still riding on the coattails of the one
Yeah,
we're watching from the 70s.
but it's not gonna have the same energy and fanfare following it.
All right, so we're going classics here, and I want to get your honest opinion because if you
Okay.
think they're properly rated, say it. Charlie Brown Christmas.
I think it's probably no. I think it's underrated.
I actually think it's so. I think it's properly rated in the sense that I think it was a television special every year. People tuned in and watched it every year. I think the message of A Charlie Brown Christmas is fantastic. And the Vince Guaraldi trio, the music from that is just iconic. It gets radio play.
Well, the thing is this though. I feel like Gen Xers love it
Yeah.
because that was the Christmas thing that they grew up with. Like my Gen X neighbors will be out there doing their Christmas lights to that soundtrack, but I don't know that younger people watch it in the same way that older people do, and I think that that's kind of sad.
Yeah, because I mean, even though the animation is of its time, I mean, I just think it's so good, and I love the
And it
music.
has all the sentiments that you want in something Christmas.
Yeah, you're the Charlie Browniest.
Yeah.
It's just so good. All right, well, okay, here we go.
Alrighty.
Two bangers. Now, you got to give your honest opinion here. Home Alone.
Underrated.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
I
I actually
mean,
think Home Alone is that good.
Home Alone, yeah, like if you wanted to make a case that it was the greatest holiday movie ever made, I would think you were making a strong case.
Yeah, I mean, even, aside from the plot contrivances and conveniences that get everybody into this scenario, which totally could happen, especially in the first one. Uh, I mean, I think the movie's hilarious. It's iconic in so many ways,
Hmm.
whether
Hmm.
it's the Angels with Filthy Souls, whether it's, the Wet Bandits,
Yep.
his hands on his face. I think John Williams' score is absolutely incredible. I listen to the soundtrack all the time. I mean, I think the movie's maybe even after all these years and it being for a very long time the highest rated or highest grossing R-rated or not R-rated,
PG.
PG rated comedy.
Yep.
Uh, I don't know. I just think that movie's awesome. But we got to flip it over.
Okay.
Home Alone 2. Because some people argue Home Alone 2 is better than Home Alone.
And some people think Home Alone 2 is abysmal. Um, I mm,
Because here's what I'm going to say. This is how I'm gonna spin it. Is I love both, but I'm going to say 2 might be slightly overrated because I think there's a sentiment that people like it more than the original, of which you will not
yep.
find me on that
I
argument.
would agree. You're right. I think if that's the
Love Home Alone 2. It's on my list. I
but
watch it
it's
every
not
year,
as good as one.
but I
And
do
it's in
not
no
think it's
way
as good as the
better.
first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in
Fair
terms of
enough.
cultural sentiment, while I do think I totally understand why some people like that one more, obviously New York has its, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
charm at the holiday season and all that. Um, yeah, that's how
No.
that's how I'll
Yep.
spin it.
That's fair. Agree.
All right, so let's take it back a little bit. I have 2 movies that were somewhat recent, and I want to get your opinion on these. So, 8-Bit Christmas.
Overrated.
Okay,
Because it's a
I
repackaging of A Christmas Story.
it really is. While I did like it, and it
Yeah,
taps into
it's
80s
fun.
nostalgia.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it really is. It's a Christmas story for the 80s.
yeah.
So, and if I had to pick, I'm picking Christmas Story.
That's my thing. Like
But I liked it.
I don't watch 8-Bit Christmas every year, but I always rewatch A Christmas Story.
All right, so we mentioned it earlier. The Night Before, overrated, underrated.
I would say it is overrated, D man.
Damn, I'm gonna say underrated. If you haven't seen it, I totally recommend it. I think it's so much fun. It's definitely like a more grown-up holiday movie, but I think it captures the spirit of Christmas just right. It's not too self-indulgent, and I think it's hilarious. I think they have so much fun in that movie, and I love it. So, all right, CP, we got 2 left,
All right.
and they're both incredible. So, we're gonna go with Christmas Vacation.
Oh, um, okay. I'm actually gonna go out on a limb here and say I think Christmas Vacation is overrated.
What?
Okay, total.
That's
Look,
stunning.
just hear
I
me out.
can't believe you did this.
Just hear me out. Just hear me out. Obviously, written by John Hughes. You know, incredible holiday classic. Yes, I watch it every year, but there are people, and one listener of this podcast, Ryan Weinzettel, being an example of it, who will say that it is the greatest Christmas movie ever, and it is not. It's maybe like in
Wow.
the top 10, but it's not number one.
It's in my top five for sure.
But is it your number one?
No, Home Alone.
No, and it has no business being number one. And I think there are people who think Christmas Vacation is that good.
Okay. I dig it. I mean, we can't do every Christmas movie, but finally, I want to do A Christmas Story. So, my reasoning for this is this movie actually did not perform well when it was released in the box
Ugh.
office in the 80s, and it only gained the sort of cult following that it has today through the 24-hour television marathons from like Christmas
That
Eve to
TBS used to
Christmas.
run. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of nostalgia around this movie because people actually had access to it for 24 hours. You could actually watch it. You didn't have to, it's like borderline streaming of its time. And they sort of grew up on it because he just put it on.
Yeah. Oh boy.
I'm gonna go underrated. I think if you haven't seen A Christmas Story, I mean, it just captures to me everything about the holiday season that I remember as a kid. Adult problems really aren't there. The parents are their parents, right? They're not really
Mhm.
dealing with a
Mhm.
ton of, adult unrelated things within the context of the story. And there's sort of a nostalgia for that time where it's like you're just hanging out with your friends and your dad's quirky and you have a present that you want. I love it.
I think it's appropriately ranked.
Christmas Vacation, overrated. I can't.
I mean, sorry. I'm just calling it the way it is.
All right. Well, while we're on the topic, Santa Claus.
He's coming to my house in like 2 weeks.
No, the Tim Allen movie.
Oh, underrated.
Underrated.
Yeah.
I was going to say it might be a tad overrated. I think it works for the people that grew up with it. I don't know.
Well, the only problem I have with the Santa Claus is the brand has been diluted because of all the sequel movies that aren't as good.
Yeah, and they don't feel anything like the original either.
Yeah, I
I think the
like that.
original has a much more indie style. I think it works really, really well. Versus, I think the other ones are a little bit more high production and they're dealing with like the North Pole more. I mean, they go to the North Pole, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do think it might be a little bit more of a movie of its time, where it's like, I love it. I watch it every year, especially on Christmas Eve. That's my Christmas Eve movie. But I don't know. I don't know if everybody else feels that same way anymore.
Interesting. Interesting.
All right.
D
Well,
Man thinks the Santa Claus is overrated.
yeah.
Wow.
Let's go ahead and jump into some Christmas movie trivia. So, you ready for this, CP?
Oh, I'm always ready for Christmas movie. Anything.
What? Well, I guess I'll ask you the question, but I mean, I'll just say it too. First Christmas movie ever made. Do you know what it is?
No idea.
All right. In 1898, there's technically a movie called Santa Claus that is considered the first Christmas film ever made. It's a British silent short film, obviously silent.
Yeah.
And it just depicts a shot of Santa delivering presents.
Oh
So,
my gosh, dude, I'm gonna look this up on YouTube. I want to see this.
I mean, if you're going to consider a train coming into a station or a train arriving at a station as the first film, then I think, yeah, you got to acknowledge it.
I think you're right.
Kind
Okay.
of interesting. Uh, what do you think is the most popular Christmas movie of all time? Which I guess we kind of addressed it, but
In terms of box office or
yeah, I
most
think you know it.
popular,
You know it.
I'm gonna say it was Fred Claus.
So close. It is indeed Home Alone, and it held the Guinness World Record for the highest grossing live action comedy until Hangover Part 2 surpassed it in 2011.
Isn't that crazy?
That's pretty wild. And I do know that it
Almost
seems
20 years.
stunning to think of anything this way, but if you go back and you watch the box office for Home Alone, it was in the theaters for like 6 months.
No, until like well into the summer,
Yeah, like dominating.
May or June.
And this is like a time, the box office doesn't really do this anymore. The 90s, we had what? Titanic was like the highest grossing film like every week for like 8 months or something.
Yeah.
Or at least it was in like the top 5 or 10 or something. And you just don't see that anymore. The longevity of a film that can just stick around for that long.
Yep. It's crazy, man.
It is pretty wild. Let's see. Ooh, here's a weird one. Fastest made Christmas movie, which this is not technical, like down to the second, but it's in reference to a reason why it initially had poor box office.
Fastest made Christmas movie. I don't know.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, there's a lot in terms of reason why
Yeah,
they
if you go
felt
look up
ahead of
the
that.
production, the production of that film, it was actually incredibly rushed to get it into theaters to qualify for the Oscars.
Yeah.
So, and that led to it initially having a very poor box office performance,
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting. And then this one's interesting too. Longest running Christmas special on television.
Charlie
So,
Brown.
no, it's actually Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Oh, I could see that.
Has aired annually since its debut, making it the longest running holiday special in TV history.
How cool.
Yeah, that is pretty sweet. Let's see here. Before It's a Wonderful Life, movie snow was typically made from painted cornflakes, and the filmmakers created a new artificial snow using foamite, soap, and water, specifically for that movie, which became industry standard.
Did not know that.
Do you watch It's a Wonderful Life?
I watch It's a Wonderful Life every year.
Yeah, it is a good one. I don't know if I watch it every year, but I do watch it. Let's see. In A Christmas Story, the leg lamp was custom made. The film's iconic design was specifically for the movie, and several were created, although they were all destroyed during production. So nobody got to keep it as either a souvenir or even as an artifact that you could have.
Oh, that's
which
kind
I
of
think
a
people would
bummer.
want.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine someone spending good money for one of those. I mean, I know you can get the replicas, but for original,
Yeah. If you had the original one, that'd be so sick. Just for people that were curious, the tongue stuck to the flagpole scene. In order to achieve that,
I
they
know how
used
they did it. They put a vacuum,
correct.
and there's a little like straw hole in the
Yep.
pipe, and so that's
So
why
they,
it looks like he's stuck, or in the flagpole. So that's why it looks like his tongue's actually stuck.
well, it is kind of. I mean, it's just that they just turn the vacuum off.
It's just with suction.
Yeah, but it worked, and so they ended up creating the illusion, which works really, really well. It looks incredibly good.
Yep.
And then I don't know if you knew this, but the real house that was used in the original Christmas Story, which in A Christmas Story Christmas, they recreated it and built it from scratch. But the actual real house is now a museum, and you can actually go visit it and even book to stay the night there. And it looks exactly like the house from the movie. Well, I mean, as close as possible.
We should go.
I know. It sounds so
awesome
cool.
would that be? And Steph might be down because she loves that movie.
I know. We can go podcast from there too.
Oh my gosh. That'd be incredible.
Just a couple more trivia facts, which The Nightmare Before Christmas took 3 years to make. It says this stop motion masterpiece took over 3 years to film due to the painstaking process of moving characters frame by frame, which of course that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's actually cool that movie got made, because I don't know if you know this, but like Tim Burton was an original. He was a Disney animator in like the 80s, and then he left, and then he came back to work with them again, which was cool because I don't know if he left on the best terms.
No, I think he actually got let go because he was like using his time at Disney to work on Frankenweenie or something.
Yeah, right. And then I know you know this, but for our listeners, this is an interesting fact. Tim Burton did not direct A Nightmare Before Christmas, even though it's promoted as Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. He was a producer and a big part of the overall concept and story and everything. But the film was actually directed by Henry Selick.
And unfortunately, nobody remembers that.
Yeah, I mean, it is associated with, Tim Burton. The same way that I think like Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. It's like everybody always remembers George Lucas, even though he only directed the original Star Wars of the
Yep.
original trilogy. Now, he was still a big part, right? He was a producer. He obviously was a big part of ILM. He's still there working with John Williams and all that stuff,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he didn't direct it.
Yep. Crazy.
So, and then one last trivia, which is for How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the Jim Carrey version. It says the full Grinch transformation took 8 hours each day, meaning Carrey worked full 20-hour days during filming, essentially
Jeez.
half the day sitting in costume and makeup.
Wow. I got to give him props. That's quite a commitment as a film, as a film actor to be sitting there for 8 hours in hair and makeup.
That is pretty remarkable. Well, CP, I wanted to end this episode with a list. I know this is a little bit longer than we normally
We
go,
love lists though.
and I'll go ahead and kick it off first. That way you can make sure that your list matches mine accordingly. But I wanted to do top 3 Christmas movies featuring Santa. Now,
Ooh,
these
okay.
are these are movies featuring Santa.
Like the
So,
real Santa. This isn't
Santa
just
Claus.
like Jim Belushi as a scuzzy street
Yeah, we're not
Santa.
talking Bad Santa or
Mall
even like A
Santas.
Christmas Story. Yeah, like a mall Santa, or somebody's, dad who dressed up like Santa and, they thought he was real. It's like, no, we're talking like the character is Santa Claus.
All right.
Okay. So, number 3 on my list, I have The Polar Express. So, I know you said that movie was overrated, but I do love that scene and I love the book. But I think the fact that the kids got there and they got to see Santa Claus is
Mhm.
just one of my favorite scenes. Because the whole thing is about belief and this concept that they don't, they believe, but they kind of don't know. And they're right at that age where you start to question that and wonder. And to get to that scene, and he also is a very like stoic, elegant Santa versus like maybe Elf, where he's a lot more humorous. When he is at the park when they run up on him and he's like, "Back off," you know,
Back off, Slick.
yeah, back off, slick, and then he's like, "Oh, the Central Park Rangers, they've been trying to get me for years." No, you have like
Okay.
a stoic Santa, I think that sort of embodies, the night before Christmas and the Polar Express and sort of, the person who, when you go to the Christmas stores, that's what we're always referring to, not necessarily always the fun, goofy guy.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But speaking of the fun, goofy guy, number 2 on my list is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the stop motion
The
special from
longest
Disney.
running Christmas
Yeah.
special of all time. Gotcha. Okay.
Now, he is a little bit more goofy and he definitely has fun, but I do love that special. I used to watch it every year. I don't watch it every year now. I think literally when we were talking earlier about TV specials, like I used to literally make sure I would watch it because I knew it was going to be on.
Yeah.
Where now I feel like I have a list of classics that I get to, but that's one that actually slips through the cracks a little bit. So I think I'm going to watch it this year.
I
I'd be
think I'm
really
going to
pumped.
too. Actually,
Yeah.
talking about it, I'm like, I haven't seen that in a while.
And it's pretty neat because in that and Santa Claus is coming to town, they actually inspired the visual aesthetic of Buddy the Elf
Yeah.
and the North
Yeah.
Pole in
Yeah.
Elf, which is pretty cool. And then number 1, despite what I said earlier, CP, of my top 3 Christmas movies featuring Santa, number 1 is The Santa Claus, Tim Allen. We definitely are going a little bit more goofy here, and you get to see, honestly, a couple variations of Santa, but love this movie, love the humor, love the heart, and I do love the transformation of Tim Allen from the sort of, absentee dad that's just trying to, make the best Christmas possible he can for his son into the role of Santa Claus. I love the
Yeah.
transformation
That's fair.
there. I think it's great.
That's
So
fair.
I'll throw it over to you.
Okay. So honorable mention for bucking the trend.
Okay.
Violent Night.
Oh,
Hey,
you're
look,
going
we never thought Santa was going to be toting a sledgehammer, and we got it, and I think it was well done.
nice. I mean,
Now,
that is a little bit offbeat, but it works.
number 3, I'm actually going to go with one of those weird Netflix holiday movies that we did
Okay.
not grow up with, and that is the animated film Klaus.
Oh, dude. If you haven't seen Klaus, I recommend you go check it out.
I
Just
thought it was,
enjoy.
yeah, I just thought it was a cool look at Santa Claus. It's very different than I think a lot of the interpretations, and
And do they ever like actually refer to him specifically as like Santa?
No, I don't think they do.
Right? It's Klaus.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like it works. And I don't know. I just think if you're looking for a switch up, it's also something you can watch with your kids. I thought it was cool.
That's a good one. Number two for me. Okay. I'm gonna actually go with the 1990s, 1994 Miracle on 34th Street.
Okay. Good pick.
And number
That's
one,
usually the one I watch, John Hammond, Santa Claus.
yeah, John Hammond.
Richard Attenborough, is that his
Yep.
name?
Yep.
Yeah.
Spared no expense. And then I'm gonna go with number one, the original Santa Claus, just because, or the original Miracle on 34th Santa Claus, because I think it's a
Miracle
classic.
on 34th Street. You're number one.
Yep.
You said it wrong twice.
Well, you know what? What am I supposed to say?
This is a long episode. We've been talking for a while.
Miracle
But
on 34th Street, number two and number one for me. There you go.
nice. I do like that pick. It is absolutely a Christmas classic. And it's also when you go back to the older one, it comes from that era of like um what is it called? White Christmas,
Hmm.
It's a Wonderful Life, Miracle on 34th Street, sort of this older era of like Christmas films, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's fun. So that's my
Ooh, White
list.
Christmas is another one. I haven't watched that in a long
Oh,
time.
speaking of which, White Christmas has its 60th anniversary. It is going to be in the theaters for one day only next weekend, and you should go. I already bought my tickets.
You know what's incredible? Like going through the overrated, underrated, and we're talking about each of these different Christmas movies. I really have not seen many of those at all in theaters.
I've never seen any of them. That's why I was like, I gotta buy a ticket and
Yeah,
check it out. Like,
that's pretty crazy. Would you ever do, I mean, I think I would, but I know like if you go to the Hollywood Bowl here in LA, they do like a live, they'll play Home Alone and then the orchestra will play the music.
mhm.
I think I would love to do that.
Oh, that'd be so much fun.
Or even, you just go to YouTube and you watch some of these orchestras play, orchestras and choirs, just do like a Christmas themed concert or whatever. Like that looks like so much fun.
I know, dude. It'd be awesome. It'd be fun.
Damn,
Just
now I want to go.
well, look, maybe you can go see. You don't live that far from the Hollywood Bowl. Maybe you could go.
Yeah.
There's still 2 weeks till Christmas, so get it together.
I know it's actually crazy, dude, because this was a slightly shorter Christmas season. I don't know if anybody noticed, but last year,
Oh, I did.
I think Thanksgiving was on the 23rd, and this year was on like the 28th or something, 29th.
Yep.
So we lost a few days this year. It's
I know.
technically a shorter Christmas season. So everybody enjoy, though. And CP, that does it for our episode this week. So wanted to say thank you all for tuning in. I hope you really enjoyed the show. And be sure to continue the conversations. Like I said, we had quite a few topics this week. So chime in and let us know what your thoughts are. But you can follow the show at filmmakerscompass.com. There we have a feed of all of our previous episodes as well as links to all of our social media, which you can follow at Film Comp Podcast or at Film Comp Pod. And you can follow me at Big Kid D-Man.
You can
CP.
follow me at IndyCal5. Thank you for hanging out and talking Christmas movies with us. And we will see you back here next week. Until then, keep watching movies.